when the devil speaks, you never feel beloved. When the devil speaks, you feel afraid, you feel condemned, because that's in the abundance of his heart. You'll feel rejected by God. I see people, they'll say, I can't go to church anymore, I can't do this, I've done something wrong, and God's done with me, he's through with me. And you listen to them and you realize they're listening to the wrong voice, because the words are separating them from God. There's a difference between conviction and condemnation. They both can be painful, but one draws you closer to the Lord and the other draws you further away. And when they're listening to the voice of the enemy or the voice of their flesh, it's filled with condemnation because his heart is filled. He's condemned. He knows his destiny. He knows the book of Revelation. He knows about the lake of fire. He knows that. So he's like this madman who knows his end. But he just will do anything to hurt God, to hurt the heart of God. He's bent on hurting the heart of God. But he's so limited in what he can do to hurt God. He can't blacken his eye. He has to report before God every day. He's on a very short leash. He has to tell God where he's going, where he's been, who he's working on. We see that in the book of Job very clearly and in other places in the Bible. And so he's on a very short leash. He really can't beat God up. He can't hurt God. He can't even throw trash on the streets of heaven. He can't write graffiti on the walls of heaven. He can't do anything to hurt God except if he can hurt you. Because you're the apple of his eye. You're all God thinks about. And if he can put a wedge between you and God's heart so that you don't give God your affection and you don't give him your heart and your devotion, your life, he loves it. Anything he can do to separate you from God, to make you think that God doesn't love you, or to poison your heart toward God, or that you've sinned too much, or you've sinned too big, or you've committed the unpardonable sin. I hear that so often from people that they're listening to the wrong voice. They're listening to the voice of another. It'd be easy to discern the devil's voice if every time he spoke you heard the hiss of a serpent. There's old recordings of old Bible records, and every time Jesus was about to speak, there'd be this really heavy organ music, and someone would say, "The Master's about to speak," and then this deep James Earl Jones style voice would come out and says, "Let's row to the other side." It'd be really cool if every time God's going to speak, there'd be that organ music. You'd know. But that's not how it happens. How do you know when it's your flesh compared to the devil? Because your flesh is evil. Your flesh is corrupt. Your flesh comes from the devil. How do you know it's not just the devil speaking all the time? I think the number one key is something Jesus gave us when he called our flesh self. Our flesh is only selfish. It's all about serving yourself, preserving yourself. It's self-preserving. All things about is me, mine, and I. And how can I get this? And your flesh is incredibly selfish. In fact, he's incapable of anything but selfishness. He's totally selfish. So if you just watch your impulses, watch your reactions and your feelings, you realize, oh, it's all about me. It's all about how great I am, or how wonderful I am, or it's all about my appearance. It's all about whether I'll get applause from people. It's all about whether my reputation. It's all about how people will see me. And we have this whole avenue called social media that is just filled with people being able to present themselves almost like legally acceptably, except it doesn't work. Can you imagine someone who's really looking for acceptance and they put out these snapshots of themselves in that pose, the pose I'm talking about, and they put that out there, and not only do they not get acceptance, they get subtraction. People are saying these nasty things about them. Next thing you know, they want to leave social media because not only did they not get the acceptance, they got disrespected. It's painful. It's painful. But it's self. And self is the culprit. And like I said one other time when we were talking about this, that there's no cure for self. There's no healing for self. There's no counseling for self. There's nothing you can do to help self. You can even go to the self-help section of the bookstore, and there'll be nothing in there that'll really help self. Self needs to die. Self needs to be denied. Someone has to say, no, hey self, I followed you before and I ended up being ashamed. I end up regretting that. I end up living in embarrassment. I'm not going to follow your lead anymore. But that nature that's always going off within us is selfish. And that's a dead giveaway. Self-righteousness. It sounds noble, but you listen hard enough. That's self-righteousness. Die, you beggar, die. That's what you have to speak to yourself sometimes. So they're the three main voices. So we have to discern whether it's God, whether it's the devil, whether it's you. And all three parts want to control your life. Here's a fourth part to it. Is there are people whose lives are broken, they have selfish issues, and some of them are open to the devil, and they want to control you. They want you to do what they want. They want you to serve them. They want to use you. They want to manipulate you. And they use condemnation, they use fear, they use self-pity, they use all kinds of stuff to manipulate you. And you have to be able to hear that and say, I hear self-pity. I hear manipulation. I feel I'm getting the sense that they just want to control me, and somebody has to say no to that. So there's all these voices, all these influences that are at work in our lives. One way that has been very helpful for me to be able to discern the voice of God. When you think, and when I think, we think laterally, like one thought leads to another thought. If there's a real line of thinking, that's how we think. This thought leads, I should think about that. Oh, well then, if that's true, I should think about this. One thought leads to another thought. When I'm praying for people, or when I'm seeking the Lord, and I have a thought that's completely outside that line of thinking, and I realize I'm not thinking that. There's no dots that connect where I was thinking and that thought. That thought seems so random. It seems outside of myself. It's not something I was thinking. That requires some special attention, some special discernment. Where is that coming from? And I pay attention to that, especially when I'm in that moment, I'm praying for something specific, or I'm praying for a person. I watch those thoughts that are different, that are kind of like, boy, I was not thinking that. So it's not the volume of the voice, it's not necessarily the tone of the voice, although I find that when the Lord speaks, it's just so calm, cool, and collected, even though my circumstance, I may be going crazy. I was caught in a hurricane one time down in Miami, and when I got into the airport, you could feel the depression in the air, and people are crying. People are just checking out, just curling up on the floor. People are being arrested because they're so angry. It was just chaos. But when the Lord was speaking about my getting out of that, being able to fly that night, it was just so calm, so cool, so collected. It was different than the environment. It was different than what I was feeling. And I got to fly that night. I followed. I stayed with it. I had to keep believing that that was really the Lord. And it led me out of the awful, awful situation. One time, Heather and I went on a cruise up the coast of Canada for a week with some friends, and one of our goals was that when we'd get off the ship every day, there'd be a port of call. We would just walk, and we would walk all over town. We'd see everything, and we just walked. We walked a lot, and I didn't have really good walking shoes, really comfortable walking shoes. They were sneakers, but they weren't really the best, and so my feet got so tired. And we're walking like for 7 days. We'd just get out every day and just really hoof it, really cover a lot of territory and see as much as we could see. So on the way home, we picked up the boat and it dropped us off again in Baltimore. So I'm driving home from Baltimore, and I'm just driving. We're on that long piece of highway along the Susquehanna River, and I'm just thinking to myself, my feet are killing me. My feet are so tired. And I had this thought. I remember one time I was preaching somewhere, and this guy took me around and showed me around, and he took me to this moccasin store where they had these special moose hide moccasins, and we're talking about buying a pair, but they're so expensive. But I remember trying them on, and it's just like putting your feet in something so soft and so comfortable. And as I'm driving along, and Heather's beside me in the car, and I'm just thinking, in fact, I think what brought that to my mind is I just passed a sign that said, up ahead is an Indian trading post where they have genuine moose hide moccasins. And that brought that whole thing back to my mind. I was in Buffalo. We went to that store. I tried them on. And so in myself, just as I'm going on mile by mile, I'm thinking, would I ever love to sink my feet, my tired, sore feet, in a pair of genuine moose hide moccasins? So I was just thinking. Wasn't even praying. Just thinking. And all of a sudden I heard this voice, just as straightforward, just as calm, totally shocked me because I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't asking for it. But this calm voice came and said, you have not because you asked not. And I'm, what? And I have not because I asked not? You mean I could ask for genuine moose hide moccasins? I mean, I didn't pray on that level for those needs of comfort. It wasn't like I had to have a pair. But this thought, I couldn't get over this thought, just kind of interjected itself in my own thinking, and it was like outside and I'm trying to discern, who was that? Where did that come from? And I'm driving along, and I'm saying, Lord, does that mean I can ask for a pair of genuine moose hide? It opened up this whole crazy dialogue for the next few miles. Lord, do you want me to pray that? I mean, can I pray that? Is that allowed? And I thought, I will pray that. I will ask it. And I was having this whole thing, and Heather's beside me. She's oblivious to all of it. So finally, I lean up, and hold on to the steering wheel, and I lean up, and I said, Father, I would like a pair of genuine moose hide moccasins. And I asked this in Jesus' name. Now, I would never have prayed that prayer in a million years, but it was like he was offering this insight that I have not because I asked not, which is in James. I knew it was in the Bible. Thank you, Lord. And I'm driving along with my aching feet, and we pull up to this huge Walmart-size thrift store. And I know in my heart that my moose hide moccasins are in this thrift store. A thrift store is things are cheap. It's used, but they're cheap. So we pull up, there's the thrift store. I know in my heart that's where my moccasins are. So I said to Heather, would you like to go in the thrift store? And she always says yes. And she says, nah, let's just keep going. I said, are you sure? And she's, no, let's just get home. So now we're sitting at a traffic light waiting for the light. So all this is being processed in the length of a light. And so I said, I wouldn't mind just getting out and stretching my legs, and because we'd been driving by that time a few hours, and so I'd like to go in there. Would you want to come with me? She's, yeah, go ahead. We'll do that. We'll stretch our legs. And so we pulled in there, and I am so eager now because I want to know if this thing is going to happen, if it's true. I wasn't so eager for the moccasins. It was like, is this really? I want to discern this whole situation. I want to experience something from God. So we get in the store, and she goes to the ladies section. I make a beeline to these racks, bigger than this room, racks filled with shoes, used stinky shoes, men's shoes, women's shoes, kids' shoes, and I know my moccasins are on this rack somewhere, and I'm just cruising along. I'm looking down, and my heart stops. I'm standing, and there's a pair of genuine moose-hide moccasins that had the tag on the side that said genuine moose-hide moccasins. The leather tag, the same as I'd seen up in Buffalo, and it's like $3, and they look like they've hardly been worn. I picked them up, and I'm feeling beloved. And I'm feeling like the strangest experience because I didn't initiate this. I would never have prayed for moose-hide moccasins if he hadn't said, "You have not because you ask not." Well, that changed my prayer life for a long time afterwards, where I involved him in all kinds of things that perhaps I wouldn't have prayed about before. And then the funniest thing, I took a couple more steps. Maybe I staggered. I didn't even mean to. And there's a second pair, just like new. I've been to that store. I bet I've been to that store a dozen times since then. I've never seen one pair of genuine moose-hide moccasins. Well, these are them. And you see the tag? There's a tag on this one, and if you read it, it says genuine moose-hide moccasins. And you can't wear them out. And when you sink your feet in them, man, you just feel so good. And so I went out to the car, and I turfed my old shoes in the back of the car and slipped my feet in the moose-hide moccasins, and I drove home. And I finally, after a while, it took me a long time because I was weepy. I was just so moved. Not about the moccasins, it was the voice of God. And finally I told Heather the story. But it took a while because I was just so affected by it. Yeah. He's into us in a big way. Amen? Amen.